Well, here we are back on the Scrumbags Rugby podcast, eating hot humble pie after the Brumbies have blown this competition out of the water. They are 2-0. They are the talk of the town. James Slipper is potentially the greatest of all time, and the Western Force, after all the gas we gave them, have fizzled out in round two. Welcome back to the Scrumbags Rugby podcast.
We're hearing from the crowds that you're tough as woodpecker.
Apologising for kicking a drop goal.
Jorgensen, Max Jorgensen, no, he didn't. Oh my goodness me! Rush there, run! He's got the record. Tom Wright, just too good. This is ecstasy for Wallabies fans.
Yes, ladies and gents, welcome back. It is Sunday, the 22nd of Feb. We're recording this about 9:15 Australian Eastern Daylight Time. It is late in the weekend, and what a weekend it has been of Super Rugby Pacific. Round 2 is run and done. Mitch Foster and his Waratahs sit 2-0, but the talk of this weekend just has to be the ACT Brumbies. Mitch, what a performance from the nation's capital in Christchurch today.
Oh, bloody hell, what a cracking game that was. It had everything. It had the Brumbies get the win. It had the stereotypical Crusaders coming back in the second half, and you think, oh, geez, here it comes. And then the Brumbies take it to the 12th gear that they had that we just didn't expect this season and ran away with it. Corey Toole, Andy Muirhead, Slips on his 200th game. Everyone just having an absolute 10 out of 10 performance for the men from Canberra. Unreal performance.
I was really bracing myself this weekend for a very Tahs-centric pod, Mitch. I was thinking, Brumbies did well in Perth, but it's so far to go all the way across Australia and then back to Christchurch. The Tahs did it pretty comfortably in the end Drew, and I thought maybe that's all we get to talk about. But sitting on the couch today, singing a couple of tins, watching James Slipper's 200th, I thought would be a bit of a procession. There's respect for the big man, but the Crusaders get it done. Instead, what we saw was a really frustrating opening 20 minutes where the Brumbies didn't quite click into gear. They botched a few opportunities close to the line at set piece. And then we blink, and after 80 minutes, they have racked up 50 against the defending champions in Christchurch to end a 26-year hoodoo. The gravity of this can't be overstated. It was an amazing performance.
Yeah, it was. And for Australian rugby, like the context coming into this is that everyone's talking about the Brumbies not having Alan Alatoa, Len Ikitau, Tom Hooper. Like it's all about who's not playing instead of who is. The who's who of Brumbies rugby over the past few seasons aren't available. Going to Christchurch to play the defending champions and expecting to be, we're all hoping leading into this that they'd show up and maybe lose humbly by 10, 15 points. And to put 50 on the Crusaders and actually make them look at times like a school team was just incredible performance. Outcoached, outperformed, out enthused, out physical. That's not a word, but
but it's right though. Like they were so physical around the contact area, and it's been the cornerstone of the Crusaders, right, for so long. 13 titles. We know that they do the damage in tight. They draw you into the middle, and then they use their strike weapons out wide. But the script was flipped. We saw this pack from the Brumbies, full of younger, inexperienced players, particularly coming off the bench. Tavita Alatini, Toby McPherson, Liam Bowen. These guys stood up when it mattered in the second half, and they kicked into overdrive. Like to put this into context, Mitch, the Crusaders have not conceded 50 points at home since 2001. It is their second biggest loss at home ever, and half of this side did not exist. They weren't a twinkle in the milkman's eye the last time the Brumbies won at Jade Stadium back in 2000. So it's an unbelievable win, and I think you nailed it before because we're so used to see the Crusaders coming back into the contest, right? And we thought that was going to happen when Lester Fainga'anuku just muscles his way over with about 10 minutes to go. The lead's down to 7, and you think, oh, here they come. But instead, they were so good late in the piece.
Yeah, that's right. And that's where Andy Muirhead steps up, Corey Toole. They both combined to streak away for 2 tries. And yeah, like you were saying, the All Blacks players that are coming off the bench, it's like that's the story that we've heard in Australian rugby for so many times, that you can beat with the Crusaders and then on comes Lester Fainga'anuku, on comes Cody Taylor. Will Jordan started this game, but he was there as well, and he stepped in and started to have some really positive involvements for them. And the Brumbies, to their credit, just shut all of them down. Like that hit that Luke Reimer put on Cody Taylor in the corner,
Wow.
it looked like Cody Taylor didn't know what happened. I thought he was going to go back off the field. Like, he did not look fit, and just incredible to outmuscle them to take away that strength that they've come to rely on. And I'm going to call it the balls for the Brumbies to throw the ball around late in the piece when the game at that point was sealed and done. But they still spread it wide. They throw it through, and Corey Toole runs away and gets that try right on full time. Like, they had no right to get to 50, and yet they did. And I think the most pleasing thing for me as an Australian rugby fan is that this Brumby team isn't getting ahead of themselves. Like, you would expect after a win like that, you would be up and about, chests out, pumping each other up, talking about how good you are. You've just beaten the reigning champions of Super Rugby. But listening to Andy Muirhead in the immediate post-match interview, the interviewer asked him, when the last time the Brumbies won in Christchurch? He was like, no, didn't know. Didn't even care. Like, it's 26 years since they've won there. And yet this Brumbies team that didn't faze them. Like, they weren't worried about history. They weren't worried about breaking records and conceding or scoring that many points and putting the second most points against the Crusaders team ever in Christchurch. They just did their thing and rolled on.
Muirhead has to typify that performance, right? Like, we have long been sort of kneeling at the altar of Andy Muirhead as this unsung hero of Australian rugby, right? We would love to see him go bigger, go better. There's always been a star player or on the wing or at fullback who's been blocking him, but now with no Tom Wright due to the ACL injury, Andy's been able to stand up these past 2 weeks and get the limelight he deserves, and he was so good against the Crusaders, right? Like, he is the key man in those first 2 tries. He plays that key role at the end, justly rewarded. And I don't think you'd find a more deserving bloke to stand up and deliver on that moment. And I guess that's the level of expectation they set for themselves now. They are a confident team.
Yeah, and leading into this, like, there's talks about some of the players that have come into this 23, into this 15 particularly, and players like Caden Pritchard, who last week was his debut, and he was good. Like, not saying he wasn't bad or anything, but like, you had questions that he wasn't really tested for the Western Force attack last week, or the offense, sorry, and he this week, like, there's talks all on all different podcasts leading into this, like, he's going up against an All Black centre pairing between Braden Ennor and David Havili. How will he cope? 10 out of 10 performance from him. Like, he did not look like a bloke who has played 80 minutes, not even, of Super Rugby in his life. Like, he was breaking tackles, he was setting up line breaks, he was just doing everything we needed. And, like, how frustrating as an Australian fan, well, not frustrating, but as not a Brumbies fan, I guess, that you've got these blokes that just continue to come off the chain of the Brumbies system, that he's just at the right time, he's peaking and he's performing so well. And, the sky's the limit for him, really.
I don't think there's enough flowers we can give these Brumbies guys. Pritchard's the perfect example that you give, right? It's his 3rd ever Super Rugby Pacific cap. Got injured, I think, in the wake of that Fiji game that he debuted last year, gets his chance last week. And after a bit of indecision around that first Havili try that the Crusaders scored, he really muscled up. He was such a deserving try scorer. And you go through the list of people crossing the chalk for the Brumbies, right? Muirhead, Slipper, we'll get to him in a sec as well, but Charlie Cale goes over for 2, Bauer and Valentini Toole. These are still players in their prime. Like, aside from Slipper and Muirhead, who are on the back end, you've got blokes who are all in, their mid to late 20s who can be the core of this Brumbies side. And that's what we've seen. They're so consistent, and they have been for so long. But actually, maybe we should get to the big man himself, James Slipper, right? Like, you're a man who, like, we love Slippy. He goes across Caden Neville, of all people, with the try assist after a great breakthrough. And James Slipper goes across in his 200th game. What are you feeling at that time, seeing the big man cross the chalk?
It made it even better for me that I have him in my fantasy team. So when he goes over and it's almost double points for a prop to score. Like, I thought Caden Neville's in here for all money. Next minute, offload, and in I was expecting it to be anyone else but Slips, and then he just dives over easy nearly. Like, so good to see him rack up 200 points. If you didn't catch our extra time podcast last week, both Lachie and John Ferguson from Off the Ruck do a really good sort of deep dive into, well, not deep dive, but there's a good amount of time spent on talking about Slips in his career and, the turning point of could he stay, could he go? The fact that he has stayed with Australian rugby and he's reached this milestone, incredible. And he's still got it. Like, I keep watching him perform at Super Rugby level. I'm thinking, mate, he could, if he wanted to, get a Wallabies jersey in that 27 World Cup next year. Like, he's playing some phenomenal footy.
He's still got it. Yeah, I was a bit worried about him in the wake of that shot coming from Ethan Blackadder. We saw
yes,
after 50
justice
minutes.
for Slippy.
I want to get your thought on that. That was a pretty. It looked like pretty rogue shot coming in late from the side of the ruck. Got slips sort of base of the neck. It looked pretty ugly.
Yeah, that's yellow card worthy. I said it on our group chat at the time. Like, this needs to be a review. This is ridiculous. Like, that's a dog shot all day of the week. It's not even at the point of contact. Like, the ball carrier Valentini was under the ball on the other side of the ruck. There was no need for Ethan Blackadder to come flying in off his feet like that. Cops him high. If that happened at a ruck, like in field anywhere else, the TMO jumps in and we're intervening and we're looking at it. The fact that Slipper then goes off injured from it, why is that not reviewed? That should have been at least a penalty, if not a card. And it's frustrating for Slipper that he has to leave the field in that fashion on his 200th after he played so well that the Crusaders, like they always do, dog shots and getting away with it.
a legacy of
coming in the
trophies and dog
side.
shots.
Who else does that?
Red 7, roll away. I think just to tie a bow on this, because we could probably spend hours talking about this game, but I'm conscious of time, and we know it's late on a Sunday, so we don't want to keep people too long. But it was so still in the balance with 10 to play. And, we talked about Corey Toole rolling over late, but I don't think that really talks about how well the Brumbies muscled up late in the piece. So to put it into perspective, they scored 3 tries in the last 7 minutes. And that is such a flip of the regular script we're used to having to read and consume as Aussie fans, which is seeing the Kiwis go over late. But it's performance under pressure. And we saw like there's a knock on late in the piece from the Crusaders. They're attacking around halfway, and from there the Brumbies just put on this squeeze. It was really clinical. We see Liam Bowen go over from a maul try, which was massive. It put it back out to 36-24, and then like Bobby Valentini kind of did it himself. Right, he stormed over from short, and you could hear a pin drop in Christchurch. It was just this amazing atmosphere before Tooley even sealed it with 50. Did you see this kind of result coming? I guess is what I'm trying to get at, Mitch. We both sort of expected the Crusaders to do what they usually do, but to cop 50 is unprecedented.
I mean, I don't think Stephen Larkham expected to score 50 points this week, and all credit to him as a coach. No one goes to Christchurch expecting to score those many points. So well done to the Brumbies. They took names here against the Crusaders. I almost feel sorry for the Crusaders fans because those guys showing up. I said almost. I didn't say I did feel sorry. I said almost feel sorry. They don't know how to lose. I can't remember the last time that the Crusaders fans have had to sit through some kind of upset like this. It's only happened a handful of times across Super Rugby 30 years. So I can imagine just sitting there being a Crusaders fan going like, what the hell is going on? And funnily enough, on the coverage, there was 2 blokes. There was a father and his son in Brumbies kit, full kit, hats, everything. They must have been the only Brumbies fans there because in that last 10 minutes, I reckon they got more screen time than David Havili.
It was awesome to see. I'm so stoked that there are a few loyal Brumbies fans over there. So many people supporting Slippy right as well. Like, it was great to see him celebrated by the crowd, both when he went on and came off. But what a game to pick, right? If you're over there as a Brumbies fan seeing history, mate, it'd be like being a Wallabies fan at Joburg last year and just enjoying the silence and embracing it. It was incredible. Very quickly on a couple of the individual performances in this, Declan Meredith, for me, just had a really nice polished game. He laid on a nice chip for Caden Pritchard that bounced well but looked pretty comfortable. Yet we still can't go past the fantasy master himself, Charlie Cale. Another 2 tries. He's been a revelation since coming back into the mix.
Oh, he's been unreal. And so far this season, like if I was Harry Wilson in Queensland, I'd be sweating bullets because your Wallabies jersey is not a certain or short at this point in the season. Charlie Cale's really putting in a case to take that off you. So he's been incredible. Like last week, we spoke about the fact that he was playing so wide and getting so many meters, and that the Western Force almost didn't seem to know how to contain him. And to see that the Crusaders were the same. this week just goes to show that what type of player he is and how he can also create something from nothing and plays like a loose winger at times, even though he's a number 8 on the back.
I thought the Crusaders had done a pretty good job of actually like drawing him to the tough stuff, because that was a big point of contention from last week. It's a different environment, playing against the Force on a hot, fast deck to going to New Zealand. But they got afternoon footy, they got a bit of sunshine, and after maybe 20 minutes of being pretty well restricted, Cale just broke loose. He ended up being the difference in that game. It was wonderful to see, and so great to have someone back from injury. We never like seeing the young stars being hampered. We saw it with Jorgensen last year. We've had it with plenty in the past, and to have Cale back on track is just a wonderful thing for Aussie rugby. Mitch, I don't know how we could really properly honour this kind of performance, but is there anything else you want to add on the Brumbies getting up 50-24 in Christchurch?
Yeah, I think one thing that I'd like to highlight is Ryan Lonergan, and I know Ando be at home listening, saying throwing his chips at the speaker. Talk about my boy Ryan. He played incredibly, and at times he put the team on his back, and he missed a few shots at goal as well. So even though they scored 50 points, they probably left a good 6 to 9 points out there on the field as well. So the score could have been a lot better if Ryan Lonergan was nailing some of those shots from out wide, but just the way that he's playing at the moment, the sniping runs, the delivery he's giving to the forward pods, he's in fine form as well, and he's leading the team really well. I think one of the things that was pretty evident as well late in the game when the Crusaders were in that period of trying to get back in front, get into the game, the Brumbies had been guilty of giving away a few penalties in their own 22, and the referee talks to them, gives them a warning, and what Ryan Lonergan does so well is he actually asks some questions back to the referee, which chews up like another 30 seconds when there's only like 4 or 5 minutes left on the clock. And the ref explains something to him. And it's just, that's really smart captaincy that we don't often see in Australian rugby. Like that's almost New Zealand dark art stuff of, eating that clock down. And it was just really refreshing to see.
Well, I mean, he's so experienced, right, at super level. He's played stacks of seasons for the Brumbies. How long has he been captain of Australia A? Be close to 3 or 4 years now. He's been so close, and now with a bit
Still
of
hasn't got
experience.
a test cap.
Oh, no, he does. He made that Bledisloe cap last year. But, geez, it's been tough. It's been a tough slog for him. So great to see him rewarded for that. It was a terrific performance. And a lot of people have pointed out the similarities with this Brumbies team going through under Bernie Larkham, given he was the last person to steer them on field to a win in 2000. And, hasn't the heat really turned up around Bernie Larkham, Wallabies contention as well? I don't, we haven't particularly helped with a bit of fuel on that fire, but it is
There's
hot.
It is going.
Hot. It's hot and loud around that Wallaby chat, given how successful Bernie's start to the season. It's been 2 away wins, and it was something that we talked about in our season preview, Mitch, wasn't it? If the Brumbies can get 2 from their first 4, they're in with a mix. Well, they're 2 from 2 away from home, and now they get to go back to Canberra and take on some of the big dogs there. So much excitement around ACT rugby, and it has to be said, Mitch, so much excitement too around New South Wales. The Waratahs go 2 from 2. They back up an interstate win with what was in the end a comprehensive win on the scoreboard against the Drua. A few shaky moments, but some star players again backing it up for round 2.
Yeah, I was at SFS for this one, and I've had some feedback this week, so I'll try not to talk too much about the Waratahs this week. But when we're getting wins and the Queensland Reds haven't even played a game yet,
yeah, true.
We'll talk then.
Gotta roll on.
Yeah, at the game, like I must admit, I was nervous in that 30th minute, and so like getting towards halftime, I actually thought the Drua played really well in that opening 30 minutes, and they were putting the Waratahs under a lot of pressure. And that try to Jorgensen right on, was it full time that try got taken off, or was it the one before then?
There was a try taken off at halftime, which was
halftime,
for the forward pass.
Yeah, that try, like that kept the Drua in the game at that point. Like that's when it started. The elastic was threatening to break from the Waratahs, and to their credit, like the Drua had looked really good up until that point. I still felt somewhat confident that it was going to push away in that second kind of the second half or the last 20. I thought that the impact that the Waratahs would bring off their bench would see them get the job done, which it did. But yeah, all credit to the Drua. Like they were physical and they were putting the Waratahs under a heap of pressure and forcing them into a lot of errors that was very frustrating for the coaching staff. You could see every time it went up to the coaching box. At one point, Dan McKellar just threw his hat on the ground, on the table, stood up and went for a walk in the back of the box. So very frustrated.
Which is funny because when you look at the end of the day, it's 36-13. That's a bonus point win, very comfortable. But you're right, it felt uncomfortable probably until the hour mark when Ione Moananu, who had a great shift off the pie in his debut, he gets 2 tries. It was wonderful. But it still felt up in the air. Like there was enough in it with the Drua picking off penalties. I think it was probably the Drua penalty just after half time to bring it back to 14-13. And even at 21-13, it still felt a little bit iffy. But as soon as Blythe goes over, right, that's amazing. And we'll talk about Jorgensen in full, I think, a little later. But the double box kick goes up. Jake Gordon sends 2 over itself, and great work scrambling from Pete Sama and Jorgo in the first one. But then Liafi Talatai to send Angus Blythe over. I think at that point it started to feel a bit safer.
Yeah, it did. And look, I know we're not at the point of the podcast yet of highlighting players of the week or who did well, but I've got a shout out. I've got a shout out to start with. It's not even a player. I don't know if you caught this on the stand coverage because they're pretty sneaky. I went back and had a look. But there was he wasn't a streaker, but there's a kid who jumps the fence after that Blythe try, and he runs up and he joins the huddle with the Waratahs players.
You're kidding.
And then takes off back and jumps the fence in the in-goal area. There was 3 security guards around him, didn't bat an eyelid. No one even touched him. Like, that was hat off to him that he got away with that. That was unreal.
I'm sure the goldfish here. That's fantastic. Best on ground stuff. I will have to find him. If you know, please let us know. Get in touch via the DMs or tweet us.
There's one frame I've been able to find of him just coming into shot in the try, in the sort of after Blythe's walking back. You can see Nick Berry standing there, and he just comes in from off the side, but it's split second stuff, and Stan gets straight away from it quickly. But yeah, it was.
That is brilliant.
I actually was talking to the people I was with. I was like, "Did anyone see that kid?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I thought I was talking about a ball boy. I was like, "No, he was wearing a jersey." Caught it on the sand. Yeah, I'll try and find a clip to send you, Lachie, so we can get it out on the socials because that's
so good,
unreal.
Oh, let us know if you know who they are. Please give us a shout out. That's fantastic, fantastic crowd work. So like Blythe goes over, and then from there it was pretty solid, wasn't it? Like you get the maul try, good penalty, good pressure. Ione Moananu goes over for a second, but so much was built from the first half performance where they just did enough defensively. Like Charlie Gamble's opening 20 minutes, for example, Mitch, was so important, getting back over the ball and keeping the Tahs in the contest when the Drua were running so hot so early.
Yeah, one thing, like to the Drua's credit, like I was saying before, is their physicality early on. Like they were blowing blokes off the contact just in tackles. Like the Waratahs were getting thrown off tackles when they were carrying the ball. And it really took some of the piggies, and to Charlie Gamble specifically, like you were saying, to step up and actually arrest that momentum back, get over the pill quickly, and actually speed up the ruck. That started to see the Drua lose that sort of ascendancy in that area. Really smart, in a sense, tactical decisions as well by Glenn Jackson and his Drua team. By I think it was Lamani who started for them, but he balked about 4 times and got the Waratahs offside really quickly. Got good pay for it early, but I think he got warned for it after that. But that's smart coaching, because that's one way that you can actually nullify the threat that this Waratahs attack speed is, a defensive line rush speed is now bringing. Yeah.
Well, it was a big part of what they talked about in the postgame too, wasn't it, Mitch? Like, our mate Fergo was down there in the presser afterwards. He was asking about the line speed, and it's clearly something that the Tahs rather have picked up. They're pushing up so hard off the line to try and put pressure on, and it's yielding some dividends, because the physicality, the speed with which they get off the line is forcing teams to rush, to not look as comfortable. And while the Drua are better than most in broken play, it's certainly helped, and it creates opportunities for just little kick errors, little bits of pressure that didn't quite go the Drua's way, and it gave them opportunities for players like Jorgo to exploit that space. And while the first try that we're going to talk about now, it came off a bit of set piece work from the scrum and a bit of nothing ball. Like he just cashed in whenever he got his hands on the ball. You got to talk me through the crowd feel when he does the in out in and goes around Rakura. That was incredible.
That's up there. That crowd sensation when you see something like that on a rugby field, that's up there with like 2014 when they win the premiership and everyone's just in disbelief that kick goes over from Foley. Like it was. I'll preface this that we were sitting in the sort of Waratahs family and friends section, and so they were the people were very invested in the game. And when that happened, like it's almost like shock, but then just utter ecstaticness. Like to see him score that try from nothing, just incredible. And I've spoken about it in the podcast for the last few weeks that he's good for 2 tries from nothing. I even said to my brother at the time, like, that's the first try. He's got another one in the second half. Just wait. And he did it a few minutes later. But yeah, he's just in such good form at the moment. And he had no right to score that. No one, I think, in World Rugby. I can't even think of another winger in World Rugby that would have scored that try.
Oh, for me, it's like him and Cheslin Colby. Like the footwork was incredible. To leave Rakuro grasping at air, didn't even touch him. That was impressive. And we know how good Rakuro is. Like he beat Jorgo for pace on that first try for the Drua.
Yeah.
Almost beat him for a second touchdown. So he's not wanting in the gas. But that was just phenomenal to get around. And obviously, Jorgo caps it off with a try at the very end with a cross kick from Deb to really put it out beyond. But I have to ask. You know that I'm always going to find a point to pick at the Sky Blue. I want to know what you think about the first try to Charlie Gamble. So what I'm seeing on the replay, and it's not something that I saw in post-game analysis, so maybe I'm just clutching at straws here.
Okay.
But to me, when Charlie Gamble goes through basically untouched on a pick and drive from 5 metres out, it looked an awful lot like Clem Howler-Holo, who was backing up from a previous ruck, stood at the pillar and didn't quite budge when he was pushed out of the way, and that's the hole that was created for him to go through. Am I being too picky here, or was that a good bit of gamesmanship from Big Clem?
I must admit, I actually haven't gone back and seen that. Like, I haven't caught the replay after being at the stadium. So sitting in the stand, you don't see a heap of that kind of content.
So it's play on.
Analysis. So for me, if Nick Berry is as closer than I was and awards it no issue and the TMO doesn't jump in and say anything, play on.
Look, I scrap it out because I think that's fair given the other one, which I thought was a fair pass. So, Jorgo's second at the very death. I thought they probably cancelled each other out in the very end. But a good bit of work around the ruck. It's good to see that a bit of the dark arts are still alive and well from this game. Look, Tahs 2-0, looking solid. It hasn't been perfect yet. But what's impressed you about these opening fortnight from the Tahs at home? What stood out for you?
Yeah, I think the physicality from the forward pack is something that we haven't really seen. And I'm not just talking about set piece. I'm talking about like in open play, in attack, ball in hand, the work that their forward pack is doing when they get in the opposition 22, like the way that they're picking and driving and ascending up the field. That is something that I haven't seen from a Waratahs team for. Like it brings back Jackpot Geeta vibes for me. Like that physicality that Michael Checker brought to the Tahs in 2014. Now, I'm not trying to get ahead of myself, but just the way that when they get into the 22, they have options to score tries now. It's if they go in tight, they're scoring tries. And geez, if Monanu is on the field as well, like he'll score a try from anywhere. That guy is just a freak at the pick and drive. And then you've also got that stellar backline as well. Jorgensen, Suaalii, even though he's a little bit off the pace at the moment, like these guys can score freakish tries. And that's what's most exciting for these past 2 weeks is that the tries that the Waratahs are scoring, they haven't always set them up. They've just scored from nothing. And that's stuff you can't coach. And that's what's going to be, it could be the difference. It was the difference for the Brumbies, right? In the win against the Crusaders, like those last 3 tries, other than the pressure that they built up to Valentini's try when he sort of goes over in tide, like they really had no right to score either of those other 2. And the Waratahs are also a team that's doing that. So that's exciting.
Well, pressure builds points, and I think you have to build pressure at your set piece. And for me, Mitch, that's what's been so impressive about the opening fortnight. I think during our preseason previews in particular, we looked at this Tahs front row and we thought, geez, you lost Angus Bell, you've lost Teni Latupo, you've lost Mahe Vailanu, and you've lost Dave Parecki. Like that's quality right there in the mix. And has Dan Botha, for example, got the chops to succeed as Tom Lambert got the chops to do it? I've got to eat all my words. I was worried about Dan Botha at the start of the year. He has been so good at tight head in this opening fortnight. And you can pick and choose whatever you want to say about the quality of these first 2 scrums that they're up against, but he has ticked every box for me. It's been a massive part of their success. So huge shout out to the Tahs front rowers who've stepped up without their big names. That's been particularly impressive. But before we get off the Tahs, I'm very keen. I know that we're going to talk an extra time later this week about Joseph Suaalii. We're very keen to deep dive him, so we won't get into him too much. Please stick around. Make sure you subscribe if you want the extras on a Thursday. But the 10 battle, Debs did a great job when he came
Can I just say one quick thing before we shift to the 10s? Just a trend that I'm noticing. I spoke a little bit about it last week on the pod. It's continued this week. I think with the law variations we've got in Super Rugby Pacific this year, I haven't seen a team or a game in the competition yet where one team has had like undoubtedly scrum dominance over the other. Like, I feel like we're undervaluing the scrum. We're devaluing it. Okay. We're depowering it in a sense. And I think the Waratahs are getting lucky by that. Like, it's very unlikely that I can't recall a time where I've seen a team penalised against the feed from just having scrum dominance yet. It's just very rarely happening. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lachie. Have you?
I have to go do a quick stat deep dive. In fairness, we're a few cans in and we've done 5 games this weekend, so I'm not sure if I'm in the position to chew through after.
Sure.
But no, you're right. There's certainly been more fluidity around the scrum. I think we saw a fair bit of sort of back and forth in the Blues and Force and probably Brumbies Crusaders. There was some good back and forth going on, but I'd have to go back and have a bit of a peek. It certainly looked faster. You mentioned it last week, and also just some concerns around the value of the scrum. So perhaps it's something that we'll look into.
Well, it just feels like as a team, if you don't have a stellar scrum like the Waratahs, like we were saying in the preseason, we were worried about them, and they've stood up so far. But like, there hasn't been a team that has been so found out at scrum time that they've been penalised off the park, which in years gone by there has been. And so that's one thing that I think that's keeping the Tahs in games.
Well, I mean, it's a leg up that they're going to use until they can't, right? I'm not quite sure yet who will be the most dominant scrum in Super Rugby this year. We saw some very good things from the Hurricanes in their first game, but it's a wait and watch. We know that these law variations are designed to speed up the game, and the scrum is often the sacrificial lamb in that regard. So it'll be a close watch for us, I reckon, as we move forward. Very, very quickly, keen to get your take on the Tahs around playmaking stock. So Jake Gordon did a lot well in this game. Lawson Crichton, again, given the job at 10. How did you see him, particularly across this opening fortnight, and how he went against the Drua?
Yeah, look, I think he's not, like, he's been better this year than he has in the past. Like, he's had a really good start to 2025, but I think that Debrasini outplays him every time he gets on the field. And I don't know what needs to shift there to, and maybe it's opposition, maybe it's just opportunity for Dan McKellar to try something different. Obviously, what Dan McKellar and his coaching team's going for is that impact off the bench. And what has worked so well for them these past 2 weeks is to shift Crichton to 12 and bring on Debrasini to 10. And with that kicking game that Debrasini brings, it opens up space that the Waratahs are exploiting out wide. So I don't know what needs to happen to see Debrasini start at 10 and Crichton to either start at 12, or then, like, what does that mean for Suaalii? We'll talk about it a bit more on Wednesday in our extra time podcast. But yeah, I actually think Lawson Crichton is playing better 12 for the Waratahs at the moment than he is 10.
Well, that's the exact kind of stuff we're going to go through on Thursday, right, isn't it? We're going to really deep dive that makeup of that backline, particularly around Suaalii, because it's no secret he has struggled a little bit in this opening fortnight. So if you're keen for that kind of stuff, a bit of a deeper dive, please stick around and have a check out of Extra Time. Mitch, is there anything else you want to add on this Tahs Drew result before we head western? We look at that game in Joondalup.
I think if there's just one quick thing, if there's rugby nuffies out there who really want to see something funny, and I don't know if it's because I haven't gone back and watched the replay, watch Suaalii in the Waratahs. I think it's Moananu's first try, the more try that they score. Watch Suaalii's involvement. He looks like he's a soccer player who's never stepped a foot on a rugby field. He comes off the back line, he goes to join the scrum, and then he just hovers there. He's not sure whether he gets in or he doesn't, and he's just sort of standing there, started stepping. Tristan Riley joins in behind him, and he just stands there and he sort of shifts all the way until they score. And yeah, it's hilarious.
Just backstay out of them all. We've said it a couple of times, but sometimes it's hard to watch. I remember seeing a couple of people binding on in the scrum time. Maybe it was Marika's first scrum a few years back at test level. Some tough watches, but always fun to see that go to hand. What wasn't so fun over in Joondalup, I had such high hopes for the Force in this game with the Blues coming across all the way from Auckland. It's a big travel leg to get across, plus the extras to Joondalup in Perth's northern suburbs. And at halftime, they had us all enthralled. 17-14, they had the lead, but they just couldn't hold on to it, Mitch. They finished down 42-32, and one of those games that you just shake your head and go, so close.
Yeah, it's one of those things that the Western Force, unfortunately, for the years gone by, like you'd expect them to lose this game. And for them to be up at halftime, like they did really well and they played well in that first half, but it just sort of went away from them in the second half, and they kind of went away from the attack plan that was working for them. And no doubt Simon Cron's going to be pulling out what little hair he has, because as a coach, the opening fortnight for Super Rugby Pacific for the Force has not been kind to them. And they've played some good rugby in patches, but they've also played some pretty poor ones. And that second 40 was probably more of round one than it was the start at 40.
Yeah, it was tough because the Blues started so strong. Like Josh Fusitu'a went over so easily, but mistakes from the visitors compounded. Harry Johnson-Holmes goes over, and then after a bit of back and forth, they managed to find themselves up with a massive play just on the stroke of halftime. The Blues are running away with it. They have the lead, and against the run of play, it's picked off. Divad Palu pulls off an amazing 50-22, and it sets the tone for Carlo Tizzano to go over nice and close, as he loves to, the groundhog at close range for a short lead. I was really high, as we mentioned off the top, but they really started to lose the collisions as soon as they come out of the sheds. Whatever Vern Cotter said, it must have been an all-time spray, because they did not lose the contact area after that. They pounded it out. It was so easy, right? Like you saw Zahn Sullivan go over within, I think, 60 seconds of the kickoff in the second half. And even though Dono kicks a penalty, it started to be quite processional. It was 2 tries in 6 minutes. And I thought, maybe the Blues are going to run away with it, but there was still a little bit of fight left towards the end.
Yeah, like to their credit, like the Western Force hung in there and they scored those late tries to sort of get close. Not close enough for a losing bonus point, unfortunately, but to bring it into 10 points. It shows that this team has fight. And I think the biggest takeaway from this Western Force team from the opening round of the competition, opening rounds, is that they're still gelling. Like they're taking a lot of time to really get to know how they want to play and how to play well as a team. And unfortunately, it could take another few rounds for them to really start to hit their straps. And by that point, I think the season might be run and done for them.
Well, they've got such a tough draw. It was the main thing that we looked at, and we know that their travel's chunked into blocks, which is better for the team not going back and forth so much across the Nullarbor, less travel. But they now go away for 3 weeks straight. They're against Moana Pacifica, who admittedly came off a tough result against the Hurricanes, but we know their quality. No one else beats the Drua at Churchill Park. Then they face the Highlanders and then the Hurricanes all away in New Zealand. So they've got 3 weeks on the road. They could, I think the bookies will probably have them 0-5 to start their season. And I remember hand on heart saying they're going to finish above the Tahs this year. So it's such a tough run ahead. What can they do to sort of get themselves back in the mix? We know that there's so much quality in the team, but there is so little consistency from last year's selections.
Yeah, I think what's important for them is to play. It's you almost want to say fitness is a key part, and I'm not saying they're not fit. Like they look really fit, but they're not staying in games. Like they're having these periods where they attack really well and they'll score a try, like they did at the end, that pressure they applied and scored. Carlo Tizzano scores just on halftime, but then they open the second half with some pretty sloppy opening minutes, and like you can't in this type of competition. Super Rugby is one of the most intense competitions in the world. That you just can't afford to be in and out of games like that. And so it's like they almost need to simplify their game plan a little bit, maybe play a little bit straighter and not throw it around as much, not overwork their forwards, which they were guilty of in round one. They did look better in the opening 40 minutes of this game. They were getting more pay from the forwards. They weren't working them as hard. And that's probably something they need to sort of look at what they did well in those opening 2 weeks and sort of try and replicate that more often.
It's funny when you mentioned the fitness, and I think it's part of it, but also the breaks in play, which is something you touched on too. Like we saw first round, right? They dominated the Brumbies for the opening 20, a long water break, and then it was like they didn't know each other. The Brumbies cashed in. It was a similar kind of deal here. In the first 10 minutes of the second half after half time, they just got completely blown off the park, and little brain fades late. There was a good piece in rugby.com.au by Nath Williamson talked about between the 67th and 69th minutes, the Blues were backpedaling, the Force had just scored again, and immediately from the restart, it goes straight out. They give away a half arm. It sets up the opportunity for Lachlan McWonnell to just roll over comfortably. It's little brain fades that have I think, historically cost the Force. They're not a team that you think, oh God, you're never going to go away. There's, I think, a feeling for oppositions that you can get the Force if you just stay in long enough. They will break. So a huge challenge now coming up. It feels like they have to beat Moana Pacifica in this round 3 if they're going to have any chance of breaking this finals hoodoo.
I think also the other thing is confidence. Like when you've got a team of new players who've come together and there's not a heap of guys who were there last season, they haven't been a team for years that has been confident to win. Like they go into games thinking or knowing they're going to win, like the Crusaders or the Chiefs or the Blues even. Like they're just confident that when the going gets tough, that they'll pull something out of the bag and wrest momentum back. Whereas when the going gets tough for the Force, they sort of go into their shells a bit and they look like they get a bit shell-shocked. They don't know what the best option is, and that's when they start to, those mistakes eat into the game. And so I think that's going to take a really long time to build that winning culture. And I don't think Super Rugby's where that needs to be done. That's something that probably that Super Rugby Oz competition in the postseason is where you can really utilise that. And to their credit, like the Force were good in that competition last year. It was just that for whatever reason, again, that final that they hosted against the Waratahs where they just didn't show up on the day and the Tahs blew them away. So yeah, it's difficult for them how you go about getting confidence into a group of players who just don't know each other.
Super Rugby Oz is a strange barometer too because the Brumbies did terribly, and yet here they are, 2 away wins to start the season. They were terrible in trials as well, and yet the Tahs have carried theirs through. Such a hard thing to focus on. But when you look at the ladder now, Mitch, you have the Brumbies and the Tahs first and second heading straight into it. It's been almost a dream start for those two sides. And
I'm getting really excited for the Tahs Brumbies final later in the year. Like that,
well,
that's going to be awesome.
When did they meet? I'm just pulling up the draw now.
No, I'm talking about the final, like the last round of
the big dance.
The big dance.
My
Tahs
mistake.
Brumbies, put in your calendars now, folks, because it's happening. I don't care if it's in Sydney or if it's in Canberra. I'll travel. Let's make this Aussie derby and everyone gets there.
I'll tell you what, we don't have to wait too long. 27th of March. So that must be round 5 or 6, not too far away. Maybe a little later on, down at Geoia Stadium. There's a world in which both these teams are close to unbeaten. They might have to be a derby we get to, Mitch. That is going to be
that would be good, wouldn't it?
Brilliant game. We're not going to gas them up too early, but 2-0 to start. They lead the ladder. They are 2 of 3 unbeaten teams alongside the Chiefs, who got up as well. Very quickly, a couple of results around the ground, Mitch. We also saw the Hurricanes huge winners over Moana Pacifica. The Chiefs strangle out a quick one over the Highlanders in Dunedin as well. So wins for the local teams there. But Six Nations is something that I'm very keen to get your eye on as well. There was an amazing result in Twickenham.
Oh yeah, the Irish. What was the score? I don't have it in front of me, but 40 something to
42-21.
That's it, 42-21. All weeks ago, everyone in the world rugby is talking about how England's going to win the next World Cup and they're world beaters and all this, and then they've just been beaten twice at home in the last 2 weeks. So how far the mighty have fallen.
It was for me. It was almost vindication, a bit of the Lions series, because I was watching that game and watching Jamison Gibson Park in particular at halfback for Ireland, going, "Wow, yeah, this guy is an absolute baller." He had almost a flawless game at 9. Ty Byrne was so good. Caelan Doris, who was supposed to be Lions skipper, I think everyone expected him to be so before he was ruled out through injury, and Mara gets the gig. He was so good, and the Irish just choked him out of that contest. I think Stuart McCluskey, for anyone who's watched back on the replay, the big Irish 12, who's probably got 40 kilos, and Marcus Smith running him down in the late stages was just unreal. And then my heart breaks for our mate Ando. who watched Wales go down at the death, 23-26. Scotland just did enough in the piece. It's so close for Wales. They've been just knocking on the door, but couldn't quite get there.
You would have thought at halftime, like if there was a game that they're going to win this year, this might be it. And you just never say never against Scotland at the moment. Like they're a team in fine form, and like we were talking just then about the Force being a team that doesn't know how to win. These guys are a team that do know how to win, and the composure to stay in it. Like it got to 20 something points to 5. Like there was a big
tough.
double score for
lead.
Scotland, and yet they hung in there, ground it down, and they scored late to take the victory, and to do it in Wales too. Like that's big ball stuff.
It was heartbreaking. Huge nuts on Finn Russell, show and goes himself. Because you're right, like they were down 17-5, were the Scots, and they managed to just do enough. It was the quick. It's been a big weekend for quick restarts. Like we saw it in the Chiefs Highlanders game from a goal line dropout. Chiefs go the length, and from the restart in this Six Nations game, Wales against Scotland, Finn Russell picks out Darcy Graham on a deep kick, and it's the quickest 7 points you've ever seen. We know Darcy Graham's absolute lightning. So I think a lot of eyes will be on those quick restarts as we look forward. Unfortunately, we are recording Sunday afternoon / very late at night, now that I have a look at the clock, and we won't get the result of the France-Italy game. I dare say France are going to be all right, but I'd love an Italy upset.
I can't believe Italy got the upset like that. It's crazy, isn't it?
Could happen. Yeah.
Could happen.
Getting into it.
Italy's wearing their red kit too, which I like. That's really cool. So
I'll get around that. I've got a bit of a man crush on Thomas Minicello. He has been so good in the centres for this Italian team. Big watch on them. That kind of wraps up our results, Mitch. Is there any other bits of business or notes that you want to raise before we wrap things up this evening?
Just quickly run through our fantasy and Super Brew results for the weekend.
We should, yes.
On the Super Brew front, well done to not me, because I'm second last on the table. I'm just trying to get out. Now, Liverpool is in first place on 10.5 points. So well done to them. They've gone up 2 spots this week. We've only got 15 players in that, so if you want to join that, do jump onto our link tree and join that in there. It's a good bit of fun. No doubt you've got other family, friends, or other podcasts that use Super Brew as well, so you probably already got the app going in the background. And
over on Super Rugby Fantasy, Mitch, it's been super, super busy. And the Scrumbags Fantasy League is really picking up some steam. We have over 800 people playing. I am doing terribly, down in 629. Reminder to update your teams and make sure no one is injured. Not even that would probably paper over my bad selection.
Just remember, everyone, teams come out on Wednesday. So look at the team list and then be like, oh, Duplessis Karifi's not playing this week. Maybe I'd take him out of my team. Nah.
So bad from me. Imagine if I put in Charlie Cale. But
that's 2 weeks in a row he hasn't played.
I know. I'm so stupid. TS15 is absolutely killing it. Scrumbags Fantasy League, Mitch. 1,472 points. He's almost double where I'm at. It's pretty excellent. Also, shout out to some excellent nicknames in the mix for ours. Some of them are deeply rude, but I'm going to keep them there for a while. It's a high quality field, so make sure you jump across into the Scrumbags Rugby Fantasy. A couple of shots at the incumbent Wallaby captain in there too, so apologies to Harry Wilson. Some mad shots at your hairline there, big fella. Very, very uncouth. Very uncouth from some of our members, but it's been a big weekend, Mitch. We've covered so much footy in a short amount of time, and we've done it under duress and a couple of tins, so shout out to us.
And Lachie, how excited are you to have the Queensland Reds playing their first home game of the season, round 3? What is it, Friday night, Saturday night?
Well, we got the Highlanders, which will be a tough game. I have to check the date, but I'm flying high for next gen victory. I've had a great time calling a bit of a
Who cares about Super Rugby? Stuff. Already written it off.
Yeah, we win next gen 3-0, baby. We sweep them. It was it's been lots of fun, and that's a good quality comp too. So if you do get the chance, keep an eye out for that, because there will be some movement around Oz under 20s coming up with selection. The Rugby Championship for that level is in April. So please make sure you keep an eye out for that. That's going to be excellent. But you're right, Reds Highlanders back in Queensland for Friday, 27th of Feb. Finally, some home footy for the senior Reds. I'm really looking forward to that, and a little scared if I'm honest. The Highlanders have been very good so far, and we have a look at the Tahs now and they get a bye. So eyes on the Reds, eyes on the Force, eyes on the Brumbies. They're home against the Blues. So we've got a couple of massive Trans-Tasman games coming up this weekend.
Yeah, some massive games coming up as well. And the Force are off to New Zealand as well to start their away trip against Moana Pacifica. So yeah, tune in on Wednesday for extra time. We'll do a quick wrap around of previews once the teams are out for Super Rugby Pacific Round 3, and then a bit of a deep dive into the Joseph Suaalii conundrum at the Waratahs and Wallabies.
It is a conundrum. It's a multi-million-dollar question. What are we going to do with him? We're going to give our thoughts. We're going to break down his skills, his best suitability across the back line, where he can be injected for best return. And keen to get your thoughts as well. So please, if you've got questions around Suaalii, if you've got your own tidbits that you want to offer, please hit us up on Patreon, hit us up on Instagram or Twitter. We'll get to them one way or the other, and keep an ear out for Wednesday.
Fantastic. We'll see you all then. Bye.
Bye.
We're not going to France for the croissants.